I uh, I turned 58 not long ago, and I found myself talking about age with one of my coworkers, who's 7 years older than I am. So technically, she's at the early retirement age at 65, and she's still working, and she still is a hard worker. In fact, she is the heart and soul of my cell at work. If she when she retires, we are going to be screwed. Um, and it got me thinking about when I turned 25, which is quite a while ago now. I didn't think I'd live to be old. I was lost to anxiety, depression, PTSD, and ADHD, and pretty much unaware of almost all of it. I'd had some minor um, mental health support when I was 14, and somebody put me on a really heavy dose of trophanol at 14. And it really put me off on going back to see someone for help. In fact, I really didn't get into therapy until the end of my first marriage. That's really when I began my journey of therapy and began to realize that others could help me. Um, and it took me a lot longer to finally get along to the revelation that I needed chemical support as well, because my brain doesn't make enough serotonin, so I have to get it off the shelf, and there's a-okay to do that. Um, but when I was young, I somehow got to the point in my life, a mental framework, a narrative that I had written for myself, where I wouldn't live past 25. And I don't mean that like I felt in danger. I had literally convinced myself that I would go to sleep as a 24-year-old, and at midnight it would be my birthday where I would become 25 years old and I would die. And I don't really think about that day much in my life, but this conversation with my coworker brought it up. And I have to admit, it's pretty warped and strange that I was in that place at that time. And when my eyes opened on my 25th birthday, I was more than a little surprised. Now, I hadn't properly prepared for this, of course, because again, lost to mental illness. So it would have been quite a shock to the world if I had in fact died that night, because uh, my cat would have been without anyone to take care of him. Uh, my friends wouldn't have known, and this is in an age before internet access, before cell phones. I didn't have this next to me on my bed. I had just a simple wired phone. Uh, it was no. I didn't even have a. I don't think I didn't. Don't even think I had a cordless phone at that time of my life. And I don't know how people would have contacted me. What would it have done? See, I was 25. My mom would have been 45. Weird to think that she would have been, you know, 13 years younger than I am now. My father would have been, let's see, 52. Still younger than I am now by 6 years when I was 25. And if I had just shuffled off this mortal coil, I would have missed out on so many things. Interestingly, I would have already met my first wife, my first spouse. Um, I met him when we were both customers at a comic book store. And I was a bold, brash youth who just walked right up to him and introduced myself because I thought he was attractive. Please be aware that my ex is a trans man. So using the he pronoun is completely appropriate at this time in our lives. Um, I would have missed out on so many other things. I would have never had this. I would have never had 12 plus years of YouTube as a daily vlogger. I wouldn't have met some of the people I met here. I wouldn't have met my friend Amy, who is literally my best friend. even though we've never spoken, even though I've never seen what she looks like. We just communicate through text, and I'm okay with that. It's almost 19th century like. It's like having a pen pal. And it's intriguing to see how that relationship has evolved over the years, because it's been years that we've been together now as friends. And it would be a great sadness knowing that I'd missed that. I would have missed out on that. I would have missed out on meeting my wife, Lara. I went to a poetry group with my first spouse, Taryn, and he was too nervous to go by himself. So I'm like, okay, I used to write poetry. I can sit there and listen to people talk about poetry. I had no intention of involving myself in it. I eventually did do some writing and some presentation for that group, but it wasn't much. But my wife was there. And at the time, she had a bleached blonde buzz cut. And she stood up and she read a poem that she had written about an ergot poisoning event in Europe, where people had been poisoned by a mold on grain. Yes, it's a very esoteric, strange topic, but it was beautifully written. And she delivered it with such passion. And those first words that came out of her mouth, and I fell in love with her. Yes, we are both very nerdy and geeky people. And I would have missed out on that without being here. Of course, I also wouldn't have been diagnosed with diabetes. I was not at that time of my life concerned about those kind of things. I hadn't gotten to the point where I put on a lot of weight, which should have been my first indication that my metabolic system was not correct, because I started putting on weight in a way that I hadn't when I was younger, because my system was functioned properly. But you live and learn, I guess. And it's a hot mess right now. The world is in chaos. The world when I was 25 was even lost to my mental illness. In some ways, was a much brighter place than it is now. And some of that is because of this. The social medias outlets out there have made our lives both better and worse. Instant access and endless connections and the ability to pull up data, some of it real and a lot of it not, whenever we want, has profoundly changed the world. That, when I was 25, was science fiction. But now it's just part of my everyday life. In fact, right now I'm reading a science fiction RPG on it. A bit of meta there, I guess. But that's what was the position I was in when I was 25. I thought I was going to close my eyes and never wake up, and I would have missed out on this. I would have missed out on learning that I could do this. If you told me I could do this, I wouldn't have believed you. But I can. It's right here. And I have an entire shop full of things like this and plans to make more. And I gain better skill with my tools and my designs and my build philosophies as time goes by. And I'm profoundly happy about that. It makes me smile. I take great joy in what I do and what I learn. So I can say with some surety that I'm glad I'm here. I wish the world was better. I wish that people would see that together we can make great things, and that bigotry and hatred are not the paths that we need to walk. And I knew that when I was 25. I didn't have to get older to learn that one. But I did have to get older to become an intersectional feminist, or at least try to, because I wasn't at 25. And I did problematic things on many, many levels and in many ways. And I'm saddened by those things, but I did them. And all I can do is own them, learn from them, and move forward. So I guess that's what I did about not being dead on the 25th year of my life. I have to own it, I have to learn from it, and I have to move forward.